Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Gut Keys. Today's topic, quick thoughts, wing blur. Need your feedback on this one. Let's talk about it right after this. I was editing this image the other day and I really liked it. I liked the background colors. I really liked this kind of pattern back there, the little splash, and really good detail on the head. And I noticed as I was just about to post it or just about to kind of finish the edit, I saw this wing blur on the back of the wing. You'll see it, kind of back here on the one side. And I, I, I thought, I know some people aren't going to like this. I can remember years ago when I was first starting photography and photographing either flying birds or kind of these ducks that are shaking off or spreading their wings. There was this concept that the wings had to be sharp. And I don't want to say it's an old school mentality, but these were people that had been doing wildlife photography for quite a long time. And it was almost like if the wings weren't sharp, you had to throw it out. Now, I don't know if that opinion still stands, and that's what this video is about. I'm going to show you some images today to kind of just illustrate the point. And then I've got a couple things. I've got a link down in the description, and it's a poll. So we're actually going to take a poll. At the end of this video, I'm going to guess the percentages. I'm pretty good at guessing percentages. I'm going to try to guess how many people say wing blur is fine and how many people say I avoid it. So I'm not going to make it an absolute, like it absolutely can't happen or I love it, but where's your preference? So it doesn't have to be, kind of where do you lean? Is it fine? No problem. Or is it like, no, I really want to try to avoid that as much as possible. So, down in the comments, you can let me know what you think about any of these images as well. But let me just kind of show you what wing blur means and talk a little bit about how that pertains to shutter speed. This isn't a technical video. This is a quick thoughts video. I'm going to try to keep it to 10 minutes. A couple examples in here for you. Sometimes we do intentional blurring. So this is an intentionally blurred photo. This is taken at a 50th of a second, which is really slow. Here's another one at a 30th of a second. Again, very, very slow. And these are intentional. That's not really what I'm talking about. So this one might be a little bit more artistic, really about color and movement and capturing the movement of the flock. All right, but really focused on color. But when we think of waterfowl and kind of these stretching wings, we normally want stuff like this, like sharp. To get this, our shutter speeds for this type of photo over 1,000th of a second, so 1/1,000. It can be more than that, so I'm not telling you that it will freeze action at 1/1,000. Really depends on how fast things are moving. By the way, when ducks have their arms in that position, they will pause just, a fraction of a second and come back. But remember, you're shooting at a 1,000th of a second. Once these wings start coming in, those wings are going to be blurred. So just kind of an FYI pro tip. You see it here. Very similar shutter speed, by the way, but you can see as the wings come in, there's a little bit of motion blur. So just a couple of examples of how the same shutter speed can result in two different effects depending on how fast things are moving and the position of things at the time we're taking the picture. As a general rule, under 1,000th of a second will lend to get motion blur if there's any movement. Above 1,000, you have a much better chance at freezing action and getting sharp wingtips. Again, it's not an absolute. As you get smaller with the birds and faster moving, you actually need shutter speeds that go up. Now, here's an example of a wood duck that I really, really like the pose, like the soft light, and wanted to try to capture some of the spray. So I had to sacrifice shutter speed. I had to try to find a sweet spot. I think this is around 1/400th. I'll put some of the settings over there so you can see that. Enough to get a little bit of motion blur, but not enough to make it really, really blurry in those wings. So kind of a compromised shutter speed. But look at this one. And I'm going to come back to this at the end. I'm going to show you 3 or 4 examples and say, based off of these 3 or 4, answer that poll question down below or put it down in the comments. 1/250th of a second. Now you see the wing blur as they're coming forward. Remember I told you when they're straight out, you got a shot at freezing. During movement, you really have to increase your shutter speed. Certainly at this shutter speed of 1/250th of a second, you're not going to freeze action. I like the image though. That's really kind of the point is, are you uncomfortable with this one? So take a look at this one. Are you uncomfortable with this one? Let's get a couple other ones. This one shows a flight shot at 1,000th of a second. Notice you can start to get sharper even in flight, but you'll see that the wing is blurred over on this this front wing is actually a little blurred. You can actually see through it. Sometimes when you have so much motion, it will blur so much you can actually see through the wings. I'll show you another example of that. I think I have one at the end that shows that. All right. Now, what we typically think of when we think of raptors is this pose, like this, not this pose, but this sharpness, this frozen action. Shutter speed's much higher. Now you're talking over 2,000th of a second. To do that, by the way, requires stronger light and more available light. Totally different subject. Got some videos on light. I will encourage you to check those videos out. I think it's a wonderful series on strong light versus diffused light and all kinds of quality versus quantity of light. So check those videos out. But most people would kind of think of birds in flight like this. But what about this? Here's a harrier. I happen to be shooting some sparrows in a field. And as I was shooting them, the harrier popped up. I had no time to change shutter speeds. I'm very low here. I think I'm under 500th of a second. I might even be a little bit lower than that. I'll put the settings over there. Are you uncomfortable with this? Let me toggle it back and forth. We're going to use that as another example. Is this your preference? Is this what you need? Or are you okay with this? Heads sharp. I'm not talking about blurring the heads, specifically about wings here. Is that okay? Notice at 1,000th of a second, this sharpshin hawk, there's not a lot of movement. There's a little bit of wing blur. Is that making you uncomfortable? Like, do they need to be super sharp? Here's another example. Same day, I think, as the other one, but a little bit of wing blur at 1,000th of a second. Is that uncomfortable? And here's one. I'm shooting this short-eared owl. It's kind of sitting, resting on a branch or a log, and he takes off. But it's past blue hour. Like we're well into blue hour. The sun is down, and I'm at 100th of a second taking portraits, and he flies. But here's the thing. I actually got the head fairly sharp. I think I might have sharpened this with one of the Topaz products back in the day. This is an older image from 2020. And as I looked at it, I thought, I actually kind of like it. This sense of movement. Is it wrong? Like, birds do move. We can see, by the way, when a hawk is cruising, for example, or a bird is cruising, you can get a visual look of wings in that pose, in that frozen pose. So it looks kind of natural to see that. Other birds, it's a little different. We'll get to that in just a second. All right, let's go down here. I want to show you some songbirds. More challenging, quick video again. Quick video, but just want to show you a couple examples. Notice very high shutter speeds. So now my shutter speed has to be like over 2,000, approaching closer to 4,000 with this tree swallow. So I'm at, I think, 3,200th of a second. Wings are nice and frozen. Pretty image. Let me show you the contrast. Had a kingfisher on a log. I was taking portraits at a slower shutter speed. He decides to fly. And go back and forth again, just like I toggled the other one. Sharp wings, blurry wings. Does it matter? Not necessarily like which image or species is better, but just that wing portion. Like, does that matter that that's a little blurry? Let's go to a couple more. Willow flycatcher. Told you at 1,000th of a second. Sometimes you can get it with smaller birds. You can't. So you can see this is at about 1,000th of a second, and those wings are blurred. There's movement there because he's in flight. In smaller birds, their wings go faster. Plus, you have to get closer. One thing to realize is as you get closer to any subject, movement becomes more pronounced. The farther away they are, the more lenient things will be when it comes to movement. The closer they are, small movements matter more. So as you get smaller birds, typically they're closer and they move faster. So it's kind of like a double whammy when it comes to motion blur. There's a lot of motion blur on this one. I mean, here the Dick Sissel is lifting off, flapping its wings. Fortunate that the head is sharp enough, certainly for this image. But is that uncomfortable for you? Just curious, is it uncomfortable? When it comes to hummingbirds, these are really interesting because a lot of people shoot these on setups with flash photography. I've got two images. This one was not set up. Neither image was really set up. This one was in the wild. He landed next to me. The other one was from my house in an area where they feed. Notice the motion blur on the wings. Now, again, shutter speeds to freeze these on hummingbirds, you've got to be 4,000th or 8,000th of a second. And probably a lot of people are going to use flash to do that. So the flash will help to freeze the action. Not a tutorial on flash photography, but if you see a lot of hummingbird pictures with the wings frozen, that's probably flash or very, very high shutter speeds with a lot of available light. To me, again, this is my opinion, I've never seen a hummingbird's wings with my naked eye. You can't see them, they move too fast. Therefore, when I'm photographing them, it kind of feels natural to include some of that motion. My preference, not necessarily making it right, but just my preference, and here's a good example. This is typically how I would see a hummingbird with my eyes. I would see the head sharp because they're very still when they're feeding, and I would see some movement in the wings. So that feels very natural. Could I have gone out with flashes and done this same image with a much higher shutter speed? Probably, and frozen the wings. Is that your preference? And that's really what this whole video is about. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna show you 4 images. By the way, I'm on a Flickr album. I'll put a link down there or describe it. It's called Wing Blur. You do this a lot so people on YouTube, some of these images don't come across. You might get a better view of it on here. Let me show you these 4 images. Are you comfortable with the wing blur on these, or is it not your preference? That's what this video is all about. It's your participation. You're letting me know. Let me highlight 4 images. Here's one. Are you uncomfortable with wing blur? Number 2. Is that something you would post, the Harrier? Would you post the Harrier? Or is that out of your comfort zone? Number 3, Songbird. Would you post a songbird who's got a lot of blur in the wings? Does it feel natural? Does that feel uncomfortable for you? Do you think a higher shutter speed is more appropriate for this to capture the full action? And then when it gets to things like these little hummingbirds, do you prefer those sharp wings, or is this kind of like, if the wings are blurry, I don't want it? And is it different on different species? So maybe the hummingbird was okay, maybe the hawk's not. That's it. It's a quick thoughts video. I try to keep them to 10 minutes. Wanted to show you some examples of this, but it was fresh in my mind. I edited that specific image and I thought, I wonder what people are going to think about this one. I wonder if anybody out there is going to see the wing blur and think of the image negatively. So I've got a poll over there down below. If you're comfortable, go ahead and answer it. I don't get to see who answers what. Are you comfortable with wing blur, or do you prefer to keep the wings sharp? Answer the poll. I'm going to take a guess. Because it's my channel, I think naturally people kind of gravitate to the person they watch on YouTube. So if you're watching this and you're a follower, you may prefer my style. I think that will skew results. I think it'll be high that motion blur is okay. I'm going to go 70%. Now, if it was general audience, and in some photo clubs, I will tell you, I've seen it. Photo club judge says, wing blur, nope, that one's out. I've seen it. I've watched it. In some areas, that poll may be different, but I'm going to go on this poll. I'm going to take a guess at 70%. We'll see how I do. That's my quick thoughts video, just about wing blur today. Take a look at the channel though. I've got so many videos out there, from product reviews, quick thoughts videos. I've got some educational pieces out there as well, and some themed pieces. So if you're not subscribed, you're going to want to subscribe to the channel and hit that bell notification. That'll let you know when I have a new video out. As always, I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.